Super fast second channel video is up. Check it out if you want to see some skink action. Has there ever been a card that sparked so much inspiration for you that you built multiple decks around it? For me, that card is Salvaging Station. This is part of a 4-card cycle. There are artifacts that have art which all line up, and they go infinite with each other if you have them all in play. The stations were actually recently referenced in a new card design when they made the Fantastic Four. Again, 4 cards with art that lines up, and they all go infinite when you have them together. Now, I do think all the stations are neat, and I have played them all in decks before. Salvaging Station is my favorite by far. In this video, I want to talk about how I use this card to make so many different decks, and how you can maybe utilize these ideas and build engines for your commander decks as well. First though, fun fact. Before I was a Magic player, I was a Yu-Gi-Oh player. I've always loved the aesthetics and have a lot of nostalgia for it, which is why I am happy that Void Monster is doing another aesthetically similar drop. Void Monster is an apparel site started by Dungeon Dice Monster enthusiast Forrest ML, who you might know from some Magic cards. The drop has a playmat, deck box, and pin, I think. I have no idea what that is. The email from Forrest does not explain it, and there's no image of the back, so I'm going to guess it's a pin. Oh, okay, it is a pin. All right, cool. Also, the old Greedy playmat is back for this drop, which is one of my favorites, so if you missed out on that one, this is your chance to get it. Pre-orders for this start the day this video goes live, and they end on the 14th, and then they're gone. So click the link below and pre-order yours today. I love hidden commander decks, and Salvaging Station has been my secret commander for a while. This video isn't really a guide to hidden commanders. Actually, Alex just made a video about that very recently. I'll link it below. Instead, I want to break down how one card can have so many different uses and the different paths you can take with it. In general, though, if you want to make a hidden commander deck work, the key is to have the deck function without the commander. Yes, you can use tutors and card draw to find your commander, and you probably should, but remember, it's not your real commander, so if it's exiled or destroyed, you probably just don't have access to it. Having some recursion to get it back from the bin is probably a good idea, but it's really difficult to get something back from exile. This means making sure your deck has the ability to function on its own without the hidden commander is really crucial. So ultimately, all the decks I am mentioning are artifact decks that care about or can utilize cheap non-creature artifacts in some way. So baubles, am I right? What do I even do with this silly artifact? Now I know there are some combos you can do, which I'll get more into later, but I usually don't go for that many combos with my station deck, mostly because the station is not very good for combo decks. It is a 6-mana, easy to interact with combo piece, and my goal is for the station to go under the radar a bit. Playing the other stations together really just screams combo. Because of that, the core of my station decks doesn't involve combos. Instead, it has these colorless baubles that cantrip, plus the other ones depending on what color I'm in. These cantrips are close to free in any deck. They have a very low mana cost and replace themselves, meaning you can easily fit them into just about any deck. Now on its face, with a card draw bauble and the station, you can draw 1 extra card a turn. Now if that's all we could do, then I would tell you to play Staff of Nin. The station though is much better. It can untap whenever a creature dies. This makes it a lot closer to a Morbid Opportunist, which is a very good card. Except the station can be better. It doesn't say once per turn, so if one player attacks another one, and they block, causing both creatures to die, that means you get 2 untapped triggers on the station. You can respond to each one and activate it in between, drawing a card each time. Or in tandem with a board wipe, you can draw a card for each creature that dies, turning your 1-mana Blast Act into a Decree of Pain, which is really powerful. Now, card draw is great, but the card would only be decent if that was all it did. Depending on what colors you're in, you can have lots of other utility. Aether's Spellbomb is easily one of the most powerful options here, S-tier bauble. Unsummoning might seem kinda underwhelming, but being able to do it over and over again is really powerful. The next strongest is Executioner's Capsule. A bit mana intensive, but every time you use it, this lets the station untap and then allows you to reanimate the capsule. So you basically have infinite Doom Blades as long as you have the mana for it. It's an A tier bauble, especially because it's really black intensive, so if you're in a multicolor deck, it can be tricky to actually activate a lot of times. Pyrite Spellbomb can do something similar, but only for small creatures. And again, it's a little bit color intensive, but less mana overall than the Executioner's Capsule. I'd honestly say this is also an A tier bauble because it can alternatively draw a card as well. That flexibility is really nice, and sniping small utility creatures is pretty great. Especially if you already have the Spellbomb in play, you can sack it once to deal 2 damage, use the station to bring it back, and then kill a 4 toughness creature, which then untaps the station. The green Spellbomb has some other utility if you also have a way to snipe those lands. It can be really powerful land destruction, and that also untaps the station, but really it's kind of a C tier bauble because it requires a lot of synergy for that. Implement of Improvement, though, which is not a Spellbomb, is one of the better ones. This is like a B tier bauble. It has no additional utility outside of life gain, but you do get to stack up life gain and card draw pretty easily. And because of that, it's just better than a lot of the card draw spell bombs if you're just looking for cards. Then there's some other pretty niche baubles. The Necrogen Spellbomb forces an opponent to discard a card. If you don't have other discard synergy, this isn't always super powerful, but it is nice that it can draw cards at least. C tier bauble. Then there's Triangle of War, which is a pretty interesting reserve list hidden gem. This lets a creature fight another one, which if you kill it, does let the station untap. So it is potentially on par with the Executioner's Capsule, but your creature has to fight. It's not just a straight Doomblade. So because of that, it's kind of niche C tier bauble. Removal engines and card draw engines are both very powerful in Commander, and the station can be both. If you have each bauble in your graveyard, you can pick and choose what effect you want at the right time. If there's an indestructible creature, bounce it. You need to gain some life? Grab the life gain bauble. If your opponent drew 1 card for turn and that's all they got, you can make them discard it. The secret to a lot of these station decks is that they're actually graveyard decks first and artifact decks second. The last core bauble is Welding Jar, easy S tier bauble. It has no color identity, so you can play it in every single one of these lists, and it makes the station actually pretty annoying to remove, because if they go to destroy the station, you regenerate it, and then the station can just bring the Welding Jar back into play. Now, one station can be decent value, but ultimately it is pretty slow, so we need to extend the value here. By doing that, we can play other cards that untap the station. The best being Unwinding Clock or Clock of Omens. Clock of Omens specifically works very well with the spell bombs, since they don't need to tap to use their effect, so you can use them as part of the cost to untap the station before sacrificing the spell bomb and getting the effect. Alternatively, you can clone the station. There are plenty of ways to copy artifacts, and having 2 stations is double the value. Even better when you can make even more copies. This is where something like Aether Spellbomb can be pretty oppressive when you are just unsummoning everything every turn. Now, what I've described here is the engine. This is what makes my deck run. The card draw and removal is glue that holds your deck together. But how can we turn this into a win? Because remember, we still need a functioning deck that cares about these baubles separate from the station. Well, Reckless Fireweaver is great with cheap artifacts, and in tandem with other damage amplification effects, you can deal a ton of damage with the station untapping package. You can also animate the baubles, turn them into creatures, letting them swing in for damage, and when they die, it actually just untaps the station, letting you reanimate them. In green, you can use Rampage the Clans to make a bunch of 3/3s and swing in. Alternatively, you can lean into Aristocrats. There are a lot of Aristocrat artifact-style decks, and you can use that to untap the station a lot, letting you draw a huge amount of cards while looping creatures. You can also just play standalone artifact threats. If you're already playing ways to make copies of your station, making copies of something like a Wormcoil engine or a Cityscape leveler can be really powerful. All right, let's talk about commanders. Here's a list of commanders I've used at the helm of a station deck. Tawanos is probably the one that you bobbleheads are most familiar with. It lets me double up the effects of the real commander, but also can double the effects of any artifact in the list. Golos was my 5-color attempt, but he's gonzo, so we can just skip that. I played Original Karn for my colorless deck. This was the combo list, and I used the ability to animate artifacts, allowing me to untap the station and set up some weird infinite loops. It was really more of a combo deck than control, which a lot of these other lists lean more mid-range or control. Mono blue was Emery, which worked pretty well, but mono color meant My only real utility was Aether's Spellbomb, and the finishers were quite slow. But I did still have Artificer's Intuition and the other good artifact tutors, so it was at the very least consistent. Mono red was Gadrock. This list was super fun, leaning into the untapping of artifacts and doubling up of activated abilities. I used Goblin Charbelcher as my finisher or my removal, with no tricks by the way. I just activated it and spun into however much damage I would do. Sometimes it was 1, sometimes it was 10, who knows. There was no way to actually remove the lands from the deck. In Mono Black, I played Fane the Broker with more aristocrats. He worked better with sacrificing artifact creatures as a game plan, and that helped untap the station. In Rakdos, I played Togo and Keskit, which was basically a replacement for Fane, but I had more options like Gear Per Aether Grid. Then I went on a Togo spree. Temur Togo with Thrasios, Grixis Togo with Silas Wren, back to Rakdos with Tormod, who makes an extra little zombie when you activate the station. In Dimir, I played Venser Corpse Puppet, which was a spacecraft deck, and it really sucked. Don't do that. Look, the idea was to proliferate the station counters, but it was just way slower and worse than having like a vanilla 4/4 in play. It just wasn't very good. In Azorius, I played a good old Genesis engine, which was maybe the most powerful version of this deck because the commander is crazy, and it had insane synergy too, because looting away artifacts is exactly what a station deck wants. I also played Orzhov Baubles with Luris of the Dream Den, who acted as a mini station in the command zone. I then played some partner pairs for the 4-color versions like Sans Green, Sans White, Sans Red, Sans Undertale, all of which were kind of boring. Right now I'm playing Tormod Ishai. Tormod, like I said, lets me make zombies from the station, and Ishai is there as a blocker. I also get the Sword of the Meek Thopter Foundry combo, which is pretty sweet. This deck also sucks. I am going to scrap it. The new deck I'm working on is with the Flippy Tameo. My goal is to use Doppelgang to make a dozen stations or a bunch of Academy Manufactors, and then attack with Tameo and make a huge amount of tokens and then rampage the clans for lethal. Will it be good? Probably not. Will I eventually scrap the list and make another goofy salvaging station deck? Probably, because this shell or core engine I have built is really flexible and can be utilized in so many different ways. Let's say you got all the way here in the video and decided that this sounds like a fun way to build a commander deck. Making a core engine that can be slotted into many different decks with different win cons. Well, you should probably subscribe if you made it this far in the video, and also I have some advice on how you can do the same type of deck building. Of course, you can have this engine. I built it, you're free to use it. One of my patrons made a really cool Ratchet deck with Salvaging Station. Link below if you want to join the Patreon Discord, by the way. If you have the Life Gain Spellbomb or Implement, then Ratchet can draw an immense amount of cards and loop artifacts around a lot. And there's even more deck building space here. I haven't seen a mono green bauble deck. You totally could play Ronos and lean into Triangle of War. And of course, you can easily build other engines. You can utilize the other 3 stations and build decks around them. For example, Summoning Station works well with anything that cares about tokens, and there are lots of artifact token decks out there. Plus, having artifacts get sacrificed is really easy to do. Moving past the stations, we can take a page from Alex's book and play Nexus of Becoming. This is all about cheating large creatures and artifacts into play, letting you skip past their high mana cost restrictions and gain access to their powerful effects. In red, we already have a lot of commanders that work with this idea that could totally helm the deck. And same in blue. We have Muzio and Arkham, which also wants to cheat out big things. And Braids too, I guess. It doesn't need to be an artifact either. Artifacts can make for the most flexible engines because they don't have any color identity usually, but you can do this with any value piece. Wild Research is a favorite of mine. You can use research to find War of Invention, which gets Library of Lang, which lets you use the research to find Future Sight, which then you won't lose the Future Sight to the random discard because of Library of Lang. And then once you play the Future Sight, you now can just tutor up any instant or enchantment, and then even if you discard it at random to the Wild Research, it just goes to the top of your deck where you can just immediately cast it, letting you do lots of instant speed shenanigans. This package is really only 4 cards, and the War of Invention can be swapped out for any instant speed tutor that finds library. Then all you need are enchantments and instants in the deck, which there are tons of commanders that care about in Jeskai colors, so this engine can be slotted in to a lot of different places. These engines can be found everywhere. Find a card that gets repeatable value. I'll use the Drawing Archaic as an example. This cheats out big instants and sorceries every turn. Surround it with value pieces, in this case looting effects, entomb effects, and big stuff you want to cast. Play a few support cards that do similar effects and help you cheat on mana cost to allow you to synergize, and boom, you have an engine. Then plug and play this engine with different commanders in different color combinations to find what you like best. And once you have the core of the deck, it's rather easy to add a color or change the list because you have a good chunk of the deck already. Though if you do need to buy new cards, check out Cool Stuff Inc. and use my code TTM at checkout for a discount. It supports the channel. I love making kooky, fun engines to brew around with. I think they are really exciting for deck building. It reframes how I think about commander decks. Not centering around the commander, but rather how this set of cards can function and how I can use it in different ways. Building engines like this really flexes your deck building muscles and makes your deck quite unique. So give it a try and let me know your favorite engine in the comments below. Niju Minty asks, if you had to build a landfall deck without green, what commander would you choose for it? Maybe a strange answer, but I would say 8.5 Tails. Mono white landfall is only okay, but one of the things that 8.5 Tails provides is a mana sink. One of the problems with landfall is if you don't have card draw with it, you just have a lot of mana and nothing to do. 8.5 Tails lets you spend mana all the time, allowing him to block a ton or attack in. Excess mana with this commander is actually very useful. So I think that this would be my landfall commander in non-green, just because it's a really powerful mana sink. Also, it's just a cool commander. Thanks for watching. If you want to be in the credits, like my tier 3 patrons here, or ask questions like Niju Minty did, click the link below to join the Patreon.